It works. Okay. They're the blocker of everything. Our tax base, not theirs, and they get 80% of the taxes in this town. So if you can't afford to do a project, don't do a project. Don't ask the taxpayers to overpay for your project.
Nope, they haven't. Let's put a major hold on everything. I mean, you see, most, he lives on the other side, so we're kind of waiting to see what the hell happened.
As like the one that I bought, to try to make this right, and they people just want to go.
Yeah, it's pretty much,
Earl?
yeah, that's basically what you said, same thing. I mean, I haven't seen, I compare of
It's just
tenant, the one tenant.
You don't want to
I haven't seen.
try to sleep. This thing I want something.
The question is,
Trying to sleep.
I thought they were supposed to get fined. I mean, if that was on my property, I know I got a fine.
Sure. That's what I understand.
Oh, jeez.
Something like that.
We do too much.
Right.
I know where you.
Whether the township pays for it.
I don't want to do too much.
Somebody has to do it.
It looked like you had to guess.
Right.
Nothing, not
I know, I drove by tonight, you know, I can't believe it.
Next to him, level. Fine. You know, I said, that's good. I mean, that's progress. No.
This is how long it's taking. Right, we usually after a fire, we have done and built within 1 year. Done.
Insurance.
Yeah.
You said that. I know that she lives around the corner.
It's with the fine.
Every year, has multiple properties all over. And realizing numbers. Everything's
Worry about that.
You have.
Yeah, correct, yeah. Yep. I offered to buy them. What else can you do?
I had one guy, he called me on the blue, he was an agent at a tool or something like that. Got my number somehow and called.
Why don't I read that?
And he says,
And then, why don't I hand you?
yeah, so they were gonna show it. And I was like, well, we're gonna clean it up. And I was like, okay, you know.
Yep, that's exactly the way it was.
I know it's not one, but I can do it. I've never seen, I know what she was like. More quick on that, you know.
Great.
But it's just, you know, this is what I see every day. We look out the door, and this is what we see every day. You know?
Yep, it ain't right.
I mean, honest, goes back there. He says, that's what he told us. I'm gonna get this done before I was hired.
Yep.
Guess what? He's gone.
Yep.
And it's still there.
Yep.
So it's been words. It's been words. No action. No action's been on the two other two properties, which I'm sure you respond. You know, so.
It was 12 months a year.
We're not allowed to do that. That's it. That's it.
It's gonna be right up against it. We only have to go with whatever those plans say. We can't do anything. Well, there's an elevation. Oh, yeah. December, my money runs out. My son's trying to house. This September. Then what? I become one of the homeless.
Wow.
You know, still paying my mortgage. So the idea is they'll put me out into a house, sell it and move in.
Right.
But it's just, I had no idea it was possible. You know, they first all this process.
Right, that's what everybody had on. Right.
Yeah.
It's a whole upset one, and then reality, yes. So I just got on, and I thought,
Okay, that's great.
got on better.
So that your insurance stipulates.
Okay,
Yes.
I will leave the envelope in the grill.
They thought they might build in Las Vegas, because that's what I'm trying to move. Where I was to say.
No, he never came and picked them up.
And my parents are, my father's gonna turn 90. And
I work with it. You're going through a bigger thing than I thought.
Well, I trust you right because I know your mother-in-law.
No.
so I finally started.
No, I don't have to touch the money without what.
Well, you
I
got
know your mother-in-law, and it's actually, I saw you were one of your posts on
They extended the
Facebook,
reimbursement.
and then I remembered.
It's their reimbursement for like the.
And Brittany, Brittany,
Right. I don't know how long it's all.
so, and Missy's always taking pictures of Owen. So, I know. he's
Why would you buy it and remove it? Oh, I still buy a microwave.
Just wanna
Right?
squeeze it sometimes.
Right.
But yeah, that's fine.
Right.
And then,
So
you
they
have to
extended that.
come out
They
when you
said,
can, because like I said, I wanted to do 15 by 15 with papers. Yeah. So I just wanted to price that out and see how much that would cost.
That was my thinking, yeah, when it's something.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you so much. Okay.
This was out in Las Vegas.
Bye.
You know.
Right.
So we just-
Biggest thing I would say is, you know, this doesn't happen. It's easier to move out there.
I just think my parents.
Oh, that's huge.
Business.
That's
You know,
Yes.
75 an hour a week charge. No, but I'm thinking like 75.
Just a guess. No, I mean, I'm making money that way.
Okay, which is good. I mean,
I paid 160. It wasn't they're gonna get that. I was just trying to sell it. People were looking at it, they're looking at these two houses on the other side. This is a very nice,
right.
not really.
No, I mean, you know, nothing. You don't wanna think that way.
Well,
Nobody got hurt.
yeah. Yeah. It just, you know, would have saved me going to the DMV without anything that proves who I was.
Sure.
The bank begging them to, emulate my identity.
Sure.
They don't work. Yeah, appreciate you.
Thanks everybody here. I mean, you know, we haven't done anything with Trevor, so, you know, slow process. You know, some weeks we just see where everything happens before I even start.
Yeah, drive by once in a while and I see. Wondering.
Not only that, was in the back, his side was melted, you know. He has Kevin's tree service.
No, I mean, they had offered to, you know, you talked to come by his land. He told them. It doesn't seem like he wasn't willing to let them do it, deduct it.
I don't know. All I know is the guy called me, he says, listen, this is fun. Here, just put it down the tree. I was like, okay. Okay.
Yeah, I thought that was. It seemed like it's like.
Right, because I mean, at that point, they removed it, right? Yeah. Oh, yeah, I mean, they had a massive crane up there to take down the. But like I said, I stayed, because I was watching. Because they had a fucking crane pretty much on my driveway, no problem. Right. This is, you know, when something happens now, the crane falls down now. This is what, how could it get any worse, right?
Yeah, that area gardens right there.
No, and I was, I mean, you know, I guess, one of them, sent me a picture, it was gonna be, I think it was Friday, they had papers, so,
I didn't get one of those, I just saw the ones stuck in the
well,
ground.
somebody sent me the thing about, you know.
I got one in the mail.
Right. So I said,
Part of this for some time.
shouldn't ask. Well, just make it all
She said
right.
it was
Okay.
going to work for us. People decided
But I would imagine.
that's the way to draw people
Surprised the neighbors from the back here.
Because they-
What was the other place? Why aren't they concerned?
in. Because they-
You know, because this, they're gonna wanna know where the property lines.
I tried to
Decide, or whatever, yeah. So I don't know what, you know, I'm eager to hear what they say. You know, what the hell are they?
It starts to go.
Oh.
It's gonna be my last.
Grab a handful of that.
Yeah, we'll make it more dramatic. Excuse me.
Thank you.
On a commercial.
You know, it's not like you can see it, you know.
Sick days Wednesday?
This company is architectural firm. They were trying to do some renovations on that. And it's an architectural firm. And this guy is really smart. Did you see that? How about this bridge? How about this like? And the guy's like, well, we had an overcompensated, so the engine basin was like 100 years ago. So that over. I was like,
Sold out this show.
this is the guy in the really would give me the time. It's a hard time. Here I am, I'm like, oh, great. Somebody don't ask for the shit, they're gonna throw me that
I was lucky in one sense, I had people, a guy come and look to repair. He said, you know what, I'm not gonna do anything, wait until they do an inspection. Because there's so many things that you want to just make sure you do what you
It's
need.
sprinkled the outside.
So he did it on Sunday for the show. He could have had,
I was sitting.
$50,000 grant on it.
They found room for me and Michelle, my neighbor. So, yeah. But, just amazing.
You were already anyway.
They talked about building in the Las Vegas, they said, guys, you know, Liberty Mutual does this problem, this is safe, you know, people are caught by years. So they went to, they said, no, you get for a fire. That would have been for one show. I can't go back, this is not right. Spring, that's where I had some.
You want young people to come here, it's got its being, it's all it's good for. Office, furniture out of it.
I have
Crap, first of all.
for the most part,
Freshly painted. Their cells is freshly painted. All of a sudden, something shows.
Right, whatever.
It's not rocket science. I mean, it took a year and a half to get there.
Cameras and what's on me. You come to my house and be like,
People keep saying, well, we drive by here all the time, it's open, it doesn't look open. Especially
Well,
when
they tell me it's just a matter of a few months.
it needs to be.
right.
So I'm still, you know, very hopeful that September,
They run it.
but maybe that's.
Yeah.
I don't even trust age. Of course, people.
Why is that?
I'm not saying she.
You're actually right.
But there should be some kind of.
When you go online to drive, you're always telling me about the other two lots. They think it's. Collision course, at some point they'll say we're.
He freaked out. Everything had a picture. I think so. It has to.
I always write north.
And they have that big garage door, right? How nice would it be?
If you're not gonna do anything.
Why not take it, like, they're gonna blow or something.
Wow.
Because the actors that simple garage door and draw your eyes to it.
I never met
He could, he's not designed it. Question is, they're of the understanding that they're not letting do things like that. Maybe, they're worried about releasing their daughter.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to bring this session of the Morrisville Zoning Hearing Board to order Monday, May 7th, 2018. Mr. Secretary, may I have a roll call, please?
Okay, Stephen Schmalzer, Chairman.
Here.
Wayne O'Neill, Secretary speaking. Raphael Persico.
Here.
Susan Zukowski.
Here.
Solicitor Maureen Carlton.
Here.
And Zoning Officer, Keystone Municipal Services, Stephen Lane. And Recording Secretary, Lorraine Robinson.
Here.
Okay, thank you. And next, Mr. Secretary, may I have a reading of the notice of zoning hearing?
Notice is hereby given that the Morrisville Borough Zoning Hearing Board will hold a public hearing on Monday evening, May 7th, 2018 at 7:30 p.m. in the council chambers of the Morrisville Municipal Building, 35 Union Street, Morrisville, Pennsylvania, in the matter of the application of Paul Davis Recovery and Restoration Services for the premises located at 39 and 41 Park Avenue, Morrisville, Pennsylvania, 19067. County tax parcels 24-009-268 and 24-009-267. Applicant is requesting the following variances for the proposed construction of a 2-unit residential dwelling previously destroyed by fire. 1, from section 465-13B to permit use A4 in the R2 district. 2, variance to use A4 standards in the R2 district except for the following: lot area per dwelling unit, lot width, front setback and side setback. 3, from section 465-38A to allow less than the required 2 off-street parking spaces per dwelling unit. Or from section 465-59A to allow for reconstruction of a structure damaged more than 75% in a manner not in conformity with the district regulations. Applicant also seeks any other variances or design waivers which may be deemed necessary for approval of the project. Documents relating to this matter will be available for inspection during normal business hours at the office of the Zoning Department at Morrisville Borough Hall, 35 Union Street, Morrisville, Pennsylvania, 19067. All persons to be heard in favor or in opposition to the granting of this application may be heard at the above time and place. Morrisville Zoning Hearing Board.
Thank you. And next, Mr. Zoning Officer, was the notice properly posted and advertised?
Yes, it was.
Thank you. And that brings us to party status, please. Solicitor for the applicant.
Can I interrupt for 1 second? I just want to,
That correction?
yeah, that's okay. Just enter into the record the exhibits for the borough. B1 will be the application, B2 the notice that was just read, B3 will be the applicable provisions of the Morrisville Borough zoning ordinance, which were just read. I won't reread those. And also note, to add to that, I'd like to add Article 10, Table 465-17, the variances, table of variances. Are there any objections to any of the board exhibits?
No objections.
None? Thank you. Okay. You can.
And if it pleases the board, we have at least 2 additional exhibits that we would like to circulate, which will elicit testimony from. If you would like that marked.
Absolutely, yes, if we could. Okay.
The first exhibit is a picture of the site
Thank you.
as it was in existence prior to the fire, which destroyed the dwelling units on the parcel. And the second exhibit is a zoning exhibit plan, which we thought would be helpful.
Thank you.
For the board to have with them during the testimony.
Great, so why don't we mark these A1, which will be the photograph, and A2, which will be the zoning exhibit. Counselor, do you have any, will you have any witnesses?
I do. I'm sorry.
Do you want to swear them in right now, and so we can get
Yes,
just
that
roll right
would
along?
be, if that pleases the board, we can swear the witnesses in advance, and then I would provide a bit of a summary narrative in advance of eliciting testimony.
Why don't we do that, then you can just continue with your
Thank you.
presentation.
The 2 witnesses that I would elicit testimony from tonight are Kevin Wolf and Joe McTamney.
Okay.
Joe, if you could.
Want to swear them? Would you please? Thank you.
Okay, say your full name and spell your name.
Kevin Wolf, W-O-L-F.
Sounds swear testimony about the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I did.
Sir, state and spell your full name.
Joe McTamney, M-C-T-A-M-N-E-Y.
Sounds swear testimony about the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry, did I present the officer with the actual exhibits as well? I don't recall if I did.
They passed them down.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Thank you.
It's yours.
All right.
Continue.
Thank you. My name is Mike McGinnis. I'm an attorney at Begley Carlin. We are here tonight with respect to 2 specific properties. The tax map parcels for those properties is 24,009,268 and 24,009,267, which are located in the R2 district. The addresses of the properties are 39 and 41 Park Avenue, respectively. Michael Lees of Paul Davis Recovery and Restoration Services owns one parcel, and Kurt Hill owns the other parcel and has contracted with the petitioner to, in essence, rebuild his property, which was destroyed by the fire. Mr. Hill, who owned the property, is present tonight in support of the application, as is Mr. Lees. As you may be aware, the properties on these parcels, as well as properties on two adjacent parcels, were destroyed by a fire on April 17th, 2017. Before the fire, as you can see, with respect to one of the exhibits which we presented, a triplex was in existence on the properties. This was a prior non-conforming use in the R2 district, which is zoned for single-family dwellings. As I believe the board will see, the dimensional characteristics of these lots make the construction of a single-family home unfeasible. The lot width of the parcels are 16.2 feet and 17.5 feet, respectively. What this application seeks, in essence, is to restore the parcels to a use similar to what was present before the fire, with the exception of constructing a duplex rather than a triplex, and with a few minor modifications which will be addressed tonight. The following relief is being requested. First, a variance from section 465-13B to permit an A4 use in the R2 district, which would in essence permit this duplex. Second, a variance from 465-38A to allow less than the 2 off-street parking spaces per dwelling unit. There would be 4 required and 0 are proposed. I would like to point out that this is consistent with the prior use of the parcels before they were destroyed by the fire, where the owners did not have off-street parking. A variance from 465-59A to allow for reconstruction of a structure which was damaged more than 75% in a manner not consistent with district regulations. And then a variance to use A4 standards in the R2 district, except as to the following. Lot area per dwelling unit, 6,000 square feet is required. Here there's 1,618 square feet and 1,754 square feet, respectively, requested. Lot width, 50 feet is required. This is 16.2 feet and 17.5 feet. The front setback, 30 feet is required. We have 12.8 feet proposed. And the side setback, there's a 6 feet minimum, 16-foot aggregate required. We have 0 feet minimum with approximately 3.1 feet aggregate proposed. I think it's important to note that the front setback is consistent with the prior setback before the properties were destroyed, and the side setback has actually improved with respect to the dimensions in regard to the prior use and the suggested and proposed use. Just for a brief bit of information about the residence to be constructed, they will consist of 2 bedrooms, 1.5 bathrooms with a kitchen and great room on the first floor. The design is similar for both units, except for Mr. Lee's property will be slightly wider because the lot is slightly wider. The properties will be developed in an attractive manner and which will not adversely impact the health, safety, and welfare of the community. And then, as was indicated when they were sworn in, with me tonight is Kevin Wolf, Vice President of Anderson Engineering, who will testify regarding the project, as well as Joe McTamney, who is the Superintendent of Paul Davis Restoration, who is here to provide a little bit of background and information regarding the project and address any specific concerns of the board regarding the petitioner. And if it's acceptable, I would like to offer Mr. Wolf now to provide testimony.
Yes, please. Continue.
How would the board prefer I stay here to inquire, or what's more convenient for them?
Well, I've got a pretty big mouth, so. I'm sure the photographer will be able to hear you okay.
Right.
You fine with that?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. That's fine.
All right.
That way I can refer to the specific that I have here.
Thank you. Mr. Wolf, please state your name and position with Anderson Engineering.
My name is Kevin Wolf. I'm a professional land surveyor in the Commonwealth and a couple of other places. I'm the Vice President of Anderson Engineering Associates up in Ferguson. The survey was performed under my direction and the plans were made under my direction.
Have you testified before zoning hearing boards previously?
Yes, quite a few times in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Maryland.
In what capacity?
As a land development specialist.
Okay. Are you familiar with the present project?
Yes, I am.
And how so?
As I indicated, the survey was performed under my direction. I reviewed the documents, I reviewed the zoning, I reviewed the zoning maps, and developed the plan for we see before this evening.
Okay. Can you give a general overview of the plan for the board and what is proposed?
Yes, certainly. What I have here mounted on the board, this is a larger version of A2, Exhibit A2. So as I refer to this, you'll be able to follow along with the smaller version. Right here in the center of the exhibit, right at the top and bottom is Park Avenue. The Delaware River is over here to the right, so north is pointing up the page. Here are the two parcels. The one that I'm tracing here, just a little bit above center, and to the left of center, is the parcel that's owned by Mr. Hill. That's here. And immediately adjacent to it, to the south, is the parcel that's owned by Mr. Lees. And this outline depicts the footprint of the component structures. This is indicated, what we have here is a duplex with about 3 feet of side yard on each side of the buildings, 12.8 feet of setback in the front, and the lot areas are on the next thing, and the floor area elevation is on here too. One thing I'd like to bring out is that you all know where this is. It's right along the river, and it's behind the levee. And so I did some elevation calculations, and actually the levee protects this property from the 100-year flood. So we don't have any issues flood-wise. This is, pardon me, here to the north, towards the top of the page, and over the left of center. This thing that I'm tracing here is an existing foundation, and then right here I'm tracing a debris pile. If I could, I'd like to, can I borrow the photograph? And I'd like to refer to
Yes.
A1. Thank you. This is A1.
Right.
Compliments of Google Earth. This view of this site from Park Avenue before the fire occurred. So if I rotate this view here, we're looking right at the front there. You can see, I'll rotate this back, and you can see that, pardon me, this dwelling that's on the right-hand side of A1 is this existing foundation I'm tracing here. And these three structures, that was the triplex that was destroyed as well. The debris pile that I indicated here on A2 is this tan colored house in the middle here on A1, and then these two structures here to the left side of that exhibit are the lots on which these are going to be constructed.
And that's still a debris pile, Mr. Wolf?
Yeah, it was like an hour ago.
Okay.
Or an hour ago.
Right.
Yes, it's still a debris pile, has not been cleaned up. Our lots, the two lots that we're involved with this evening, they have both been graded out, and I don't know if the foundations were actually removed or just backfilled, but they're level at grade now.
I think it would be helpful, Mr. Wolf, if we go through the specific variance requests and you can briefly explain why you believe they're necessary.
Yes, certainly.
It's being requested tonight that the board allow the proposed A4 use in the R2 zoning district. Why is an A4 use necessary for these parcels with respect to a duplex construction?
An A4 use is a duplex, it's a twin dwelling. It's not permitted in the R2 district, only single family structures permitted in that district. So really, given the dimensions of these lots, the only way you can have a restore a semblance of what was there before is to build a twin. The lots aren't large enough to build a single family on each one, and the third lot that was the previous, the third dwelling burned down, that's not in the applicant's control. They don't own that lot. So we can't replace it as is with triplex, but we can build a twin.
And to be clear, Mr. Wolf, the applicant doesn't technically own the second property either. That's owned by Mr. Hill, correct? And he's.
That's correct. My understanding, though, is
right.
the applicant is working with Mr. Hill to restore
right.
the dwelling that was his home.
Yes. And can you explain or affirm your belief that based upon the restrictions of the lot size that a single family dwelling would be impracticable on this parcel, or on either parcel?
It wouldn't only be impractical, it would be impossible.
Okay.
Given the lot width of the narrower lot of 16 feet, you require, the side yard setback required is, it's a 6-foot minimum side yard and a 16-foot aggregate. Mr. Hill's lot is only 16.18 feet wide. If you applied the side yard setbacks, you'd have a 3-inch house, so it couldn't actually be built.
The application calls for a variance to permit less than the 2 off-site parking spaces, which would be required by the ordinance. Why do you believe this is necessary for these sites?
Well, first of all, it mirrors what the conditions were before the fire. There was no off-street parking before. Some of the other houses up and down Park Avenue have the same condition. They have no off-street parking. There's quite a few cars that park along the street. And it appears to me that there's sufficient room along the curb line of Park Avenue to park a couple of vehicles. Another thing is that the front setback, these proposed structures, is generally in conformance to what was there before. And that's only 12.8 feet back from the right-of-way, which is about 3 feet behind the sidewalk. So there's really not enough room to park a car in front of the house. Lengthwise, also, if you really can't park 2 cars next to each other in a 16-foot wide area.
And I think you've touched on it, Mr. Wolf, but explicitly, can you address why the relief requested here is 12.8 feet with respect to the front yard setback and 3.1 feet from the side yard setback, and whether you believe that's a minimum, the minimum relief necessary?
I do believe that's the minimum relief necessary. If we maintain on a 16-foot wide lot, we keep a 3-foot side yard, which gives a 13-foot wide house, which is kind of narrow, but it'll still fit the bill. The front setback, I indicated, is relatively in line with what was there before, and in fact, I've made sure that it lines up with the existing foundation over here on the house that is on the far right in Exhibit A1.
Okay. Are there other characteristics with the site in general that you would like to highlight for the board that are unique and impact why you believe it's necessary to develop the site as a duplex?
Again, as I indicated, the unusual configuration of the lots being so narrow. It really is the best way to develop these, to redevelop these lots, to restore them to what they were before. It's really the only way to do it.
Right. Do you believe that the proposed use is consistent with the surrounding area?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And you believe the requested relief in sum is the minimum relief necessary to provide relief to the petitioner in this matter?
I do.
All right. I have no additional questions for Mr. Wolf. Would the board like to inquire as to our professional before turning the testimony over to Mr. McTamney?
Yeah, I guess you've already stated that it's not possible to work with the owner of the third party at this point. Yeah, no, I'm.
Unfortunate, because it would be the best way to do it, would be to restore what's there, but that party has no interest in cooperating with the
Right, that's a real problem. I mean, because obviously if that was possible, you could utilize that north side setback as part of a living space for another, if you rebuild it as a triplex again or something of that sort.
Yeah, you'd be able to have the same, basically the same alignment that was there before.
Right. To slide the properties back or the structures back, I guess is impractical, of course. You'll have no yard left.
And on appearance wise,
It wouldn't be
it would give a better,
aesthetic appearance,
because you'll have the stoop out front, and it'll be more like a farm town.
right? Right. Okay. Do you gentlemen have anything? Oh, go ahead, Suzanne, I'm sorry.
Was there some reason that you elected to mimic the 12.8 as opposed to the neighbor to the other side that's 19? Because you,
Basically to maximize the rear, the backyard area. Right now, it is, everything else, it's not.
yeah, I think the rear yard required is 35, but I think they're around
For a
43.
building, we're 43.
Yeah.
But in order to, you have a little deck out the back, and so really from the back of the deck and the steps back, it's only 32 and a half. So that's really, if we pushed it back 7 more feet, then you'd be down to a 25-foot backyard, which you'd hardly be able to do anything with.
Right. What is the proposed height?
You can flip it.
I have here mounted on the other side of that, I guess we should call this, what, A3 maybe? You want to, you want me to just refer to it?
We can, I don't have a more convenient size to circulate to the board, but we can give you larger plans, or we can have Mr. Wilson testify from the board, whatever's most convenient.
Mr. Wolf, I'm sure. No, that's okay. That's right.
I was just going to say, could you maybe identify what you're about to discuss, and then?
Yeah, sure.
Well, I think that this might be better, I mean, I can describe what it is, but I think technical questions about the size of the building, maybe Mr. McTowney might know that, because off the top of my head, I don't know it, and I don't see it dimensional here. It's a 2.5-story structure, so I imagine it's probably going to be within the 35 feet, which is, I don't think we're.
For the max elevation? Yeah, I'm sure.
That sounds about right, 25 feet sounds about right for a 2.5-story structure. But here, this is what, I don't know if you can see this very well, kind of dim, but this is what the front view is going to look like. 2 doors close to each other in the middle, a little piece up here, and like a little second floor balcony that sticks out about 4 feet. And then the rear view is like a French doors kind of thing on the first floor and a little deck out back.
Would you like to enter that in as Exhibit A3?
Yes,
Why
please.
don't we do that, and if you could provide us with smaller renderings in the future, that would be fine.
All right, thank you. I will provide one physical copy.
That would be fine, that'd be great, thanks.
Thank you. Apologize, it's a bit unwieldy.
So it does have a basement.
We're conforming with code for maximum height, it appears, and no doubt. And Mr. Wolf, you say base flood elevation is above the 100-year, so there's no problem with Class C floodplain or any of that?
No, I did some pretty extensive calculations. The base flood elevation at the site is 22.7, and our finished floor elevation is going to be 25.
Okay. Ralph, you want to see this?
Take a look at this.
Yes.
In the actual petition, the petitioner is Paul Davis Recovery and Restoration Services.
That's correct.
The owner is listed as Kurt Hill and Michael Lees.
Yes.
It said that Mr. Hill is keeping his property and working with Paul Davis Restoration.
That's correct.
And Mr. Lees.
Mr. Lees runs Paul Davis Restoration, so he's the officer in charge of the company. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Which floor are you using as your base? Are you using the basement or the first floor?
First floor.
I don't have any further questioning myself. Anybody else on the board at all? Well, I guess we're ready to take a brief recess. That's for you. And, oh, I'm sorry, we have witnesses. I'm sorry.
We have one additional witness from Paul Davis.
Sorry, I'm overheating here.
If it's all right, I would like to elicit testimony from Joe McTamney.
That's fine. Yes.
Mr. McTamney, can you please provide your full name to the board?
Joe McTamney.
And just be sure, we can switch if you'd rather, but just make sure you speak up, please, so the stenographer can take down your testimony accurately. Thank you. Just please briefly explain your role at Paul Davis Restoration.
I'm a project manager.
Okay. And you're familiar with this specific project? Yes. There was questions asked of Mr. Wolf tonight about efforts to contact the owner of the third parcel. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
Can you just briefly explain to the board your success or lack thereof, or Paul Davis's success or lack thereof with contacting that owner?
We do fire restoration for insurance companies and work with the owner to help them with the mortgage company and the funds, getting the funds from the insurance company to build the project. And Mike Lees offered, that's one of the reasons he bought the property next door, is to try to help Mr. Hill get the property built. And the third property, he's contacted him several times, and he just told him to stop contacting. That's why we have no control of that other property.
Just non-responsive to verbal? Did you try written also?
He
And
said, do not call me again. Very stern.
understand? Okay.
Very briefly, can you just give the board some background about Paul Davis Restoration's involvement with the property and with Mr. Hill?
We do a lot of work for his insurance company, so they introduced us to Mr. Hill, and he hired us to rebuild it. So.
And then is there anything on the other side of the easel, the design drawings, is there anything that you would like to highlight to the board with respect to the proposed design of the properties? Just in a summary.
I mean, I think it was all covered, but we were just trying to stay with the look that was there previous, and try to maximize Mr. Hill's living space, because it was cut short because of the third unit not cooperating with it.
Okay.
Okay, is the intent, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No,
Interject.
that's fine.
Is the intent then to have Mr. Lease move back in and use it as his full-time?
Mr. Hill.
Mr. Hill, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Use it as
that's
his.
as far as we know, yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. And the other unit is to be sold as a single-family dwelling or used as a rental property?
It's to be sold, I believe.
Okay, that's the intent. Okay. All right, thank you.
I have nothing further, Mr. McTamaney, and certainly would welcome any questions from the board.
No? I believe we're through for now with questions, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I don't think there's any other questions. We neglected at the beginning of the hearing to ask if anybody would like to obtain party status. We still will have public comment, either for or against the application, but if there are any parties here, I see some parties in the audience who would like to seek party status. I apologize, should have done that at the beginning. If you would please approach the mic and.
Actually, I'm happy you didn't do it because I saw it on TV and that's what allowed me to drive down here. So I was hoping I didn't miss it. Catherine Panzita, Panzitta, 401 Hillcrest Avenue, Morrisville. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Hi. I just would like to say that I've been waiting over a year for something to move. And I'm a novice, so I don't understand the legalities or construction issues. But I was in the home for over 10 years, and now I've been waiting over a year for some type of construction to begin to rebuild. That's all I want to say, just let you know why I'm here. Kurt, K-I-R-T, Hill, H-I-L-L.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Hill. Again, right now, we're just asking for party status. We're going to give everybody the opportunity to either voice an objection or support of the application. Thank you. Okay, so if, having said that, if there are no objections to to the record that's been set forth so far, we'll close the record and then we'll move to public comment. It does not appear that there are any, so now people can feel free to move to the microphone and state your name and address for the board and say what you will.
Okay, my name is Mike Lees. I live at 3512 Dark Hollow Road in Furlong, Pennsylvania. I bought the lot to the left of Mr. Hill in order to, what I thought was going to speed this process up because of the problems with the other lots. I thought if I was able to obtain all of them, we'd be able to just build this and make it go away. I made numerous attempts to the people that own the other 2 lots to the right of Mr. Hill, to the point where they told me not to call them anymore. I did it. I did it with the retired fire marshal. I mean, we were working with the township to try to get it cleaned up, because obviously that's what we do for a living. So there was an advantage for us and an advantage for the township, because we were already working at Mr. Hill's. The other thing I want to mention to you, if you've never had an insurance loss before, there's 2 ways that it works when you're out of your home. It's called additional living expenses. You either have a maximum amount that your insurance company pays or a maximum amount of time. I believe that his time is running out. This is not your fault or our fault, but Mr. Hill is running out of time, and we need to do something to get him home. That's all I have to say.
Anyone else wish to speak? In favor of
Sure, in favor of
or against, either way?
Catherine Panzita, 401 Hillcrest Avenue. I guess I have a combination of both for and against. My heart goes out to Mr. Hill for not being in his home. I think a fire is really bad. I think the area is very hard, and I know how hard it is to work with insurance companies. I did sit on the council, and we did set up zoning for different requirements. As a former council person of Morrisville Borough, we set up areas and looked at zoning on what was allowed. And the reason I say I'm not quite sure if I'm for or against this whole project is my only concern from reading the data and listening to earlier when you started was the exemption for anything else to get this thing built. I don't want you to grant every exception to put a non-conforming structure somewhere if it's not with moving Morrisville forward in getting all our properties zoned and making our zoning districts something that we looked at. There's a reason if it's non-conforming on this property, well, how much is it a jeopardy to everything else for everybody else in the area? And that was my biggest question. What are you going to grant him to move it forward? What does everything additional to get this project built meet? I find that a big black hole, and that's why I only came for the specifics tonight. So I'd like that to be considered on all the exemptions of allowing an A4 in an R2, and if it deals with parking and all that, that's my biggest concern. But I would love to see all 4 of those properties come down. I'd love to see them all be remade. I'd love to see something in there. And I feel very sorry for this gentleman. It's hard when you're working with other property owners. But before you purchase a property, even if you think you're going to help somebody else out, you're going to face that. Everybody still has their rights as a property owner or what to do. And there's only so much zoning can go down and force people to work. It's only so fast you can make an insurance company work. I know. I've had to deal with it with other burnout buildings in this municipality that sat there for like 2 years. And even when I was on council, they sat in I did represent where Mr. Hill lives for 10 years. We had other ones sitting there. So I understand the frustration and my heart goes out to those people. But I don't want to see blanket all exemptions to get something done. And I was a little concerned with that little blanket statement. And that's why I say I can't say yes or no, because I don't think that statement says exactly where you're going to go through. So I'd like you to consider that when you deliberate. Thank you.
Can I make a comment very, very quickly?
Yes.
Just to be clear, the catch-all or the blanket statement is in there in case some other relief becomes apparent through the course of the hearing. I think based upon the testimony elicited, we're certainly only requesting the explicit variance requests that were identified in the application.
My name is Steve Carroll. I'm at 51 Park Avenue. I live next to the properties that were burnt down Easter Sunday last year. Kurt was my neighbor. He was home in his house when it caught fire. He lost everything in his house. Didn't even have the keys to his car. The only clothes he had were the clothes on his back. So, I know the properties, they don't look, on paper, if you go by them, they don't look, they're very small. But at this point, we do have non-conforming property sitting there right now, which is a rubble field. Since Easter Sunday, you could have told me that the fire happened yesterday. That's exactly the condition it is right now. I'd like to see some movement forward. The property's been raised, it's been leveled, the property in question, the two of them, this gentleman's been out of his house over a year. I don't know how long these processes usually take. Maybe this is normal. But as of this point, there's been no movement on anything. So I'd like to see Mr. Hill get back to his house in whatever condition, whatever, the plans are here. Everyone wants a roof over their head, that's theirs. He's paying a mortgage on a property that he can't even live in. The other property that's going to be the other side, I'd like to see a family move in there. It's a nice neighborhood. It doesn't do anything for the neighborhood now sitting there empty. And especially, I don't know who's in, I don't know if code enforcement answers to the zoning board either. Like I said, if you're looking at the property, I live to the right. I look at basically a rubble field, that's it. It looks like a movie scene. So, whatever variances they're looking for, it's exactly the way it was before the fire. Whether it be changes in coding and whatnot, that's not going to affect me. But they were parking on the street already. So I can't see what this make any difference now. So I'm in favor of the project because it's moving the neighborhood forward, trying to get past this fire. Thank you.
I'm Elvis Gendy at 37 Park Avenue, so I'm on the south side of the two properties with the new proposed houses. And as Steve just said, it's been quite an eyesore for a long time. And it's a shame Mr. Hill's been out of his house for so long and is running out of his insurance stipulations. So I have questions. I don't know if it's for this board to answer or just think about the two properties that are not being addressed here. Still that are more or less a rubble field with the one remaining foundation. I think myself and other neighbors wonder what and when something is going to happen with that. So that's something to think about. And the other question, if this project is not approved, what is going to happen to Mr. Hill with his investment? He had been a good neighbor for 10 years, and I don't know the answer to that question, but I don't think it's a good answer. So thank you.
Anyone else want to come up and speak in favor of or against the project? Okay. Having no one further wishing to come forward, that brings us to the point now, even with the air conditioning off, where we can take a brief recess and discuss the issue and come out with our decision.
Ask me something. Yeah.
I haven't put on my short sleeve yet. It's like, oh God, I gotta do that.
Yeah. I am.
There's gotta be something, especially if there was an offer out there.
So that's why I don't really, I'm for, that doesn't say, I don't know it's for cats. I worry about my black holes instead. It's on my side. Well, I had to that.
I was already there, and she was there, and pretty much, so they went to fire, because I was told by the fire, so. What was the position? Code enforcement.
But the clients especially we're being requested, we want to highlight this is what we're doing, this is what we're doing.
Yeah, right, right. This and what, right?
Yeah.
You can go through. Sure. At some point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sounds like you know your stuff. Huh? Sounds like you know your stuff. I just, yesterday was the 40th anniversary of when I started surveying.
Wow.
When you were 6, right? I was 19. It was a week before my 20th birthday.
Wow.
Yeah. But now it's a week before my 60th birthday. And I look in the mirror and I say, who's that old bastard looking back at me?
You knew you were that, interested that early, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it was something I kind of fell into, and it was, and once I started working in the field, and I went to school at night, and I mean, it's math, history, and the outdoors.
Right.
3 things I love.
That's 2 for 3 for me.
What, math?
I'll drop the math part off, so I went to law school.
No, but I mean, it's great. I mean,
Yeah.
there's nothing like stumbling around out in the woods looking for old markers. I just did a thing. One of my wife's friends, they just bought a horse property up in Hopewell Township by Pennington.
Sure, I went to Pennington Prep for high school.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Well, it's like, I forget the name of the road. I can't think of the name of the road, but it's like a 22-acre parcel.
Okay.
And so they wanted to see if we could find the corners. We're out in the woods and found like these
Easter egg
old,
hunt.
no. It was these old, like the old original field stones, moss covered, and and that's really cool. And, we were following the old barbed wire that grows into the tree, because that was they nailed the barbed wire to the tree to the fence line, and then it grows in and you can see like little pieces sticking out. It's the kind of stuff that you learn, you know, after stumbling around in the woods all these years.
Right.
And so the guy, he's like, how the hell did you do that? Well, you know, you learn something after all this time. But it was very cool, very interesting stuff.
One of the main ones that are the most important tools is the shovel.
Oh, yeah.
Just dig out the old stone rather than try to calculate where a new one should go.
Yeah, well, that's why you always carry a rusty pipe in the back of the truck, too. So in case you need one, you can just drive it in. And that's how a surveyor could ever get lost. If you're ever out in the woods and you don't know where you are, all you do is you get a stake, you stick it in the ground, you drive a lap in next to it, you tie some ribbon to it, and you sit back and you wait for the bulldozer to come tear it out. And you follow the bulldozer.
That's a real surveyor's job.
You got 40 years to procure all those jokes. I'm sure you got a couple in your.
I got a couple. Most of them,
in reserve.
Yeah, most of them aren't fit for public consumption. It's been a great career though. I love it. I mean, I still love it.
I like, people asking me about, this sort of work. I think, land development and all this other stuff, this must be so boring, zoning. I think it's really interesting, and the benefit is, when I started in private practice, I was in litigation, and you're arguing over the most ridiculous things.
Who gets the candles?
Yeah, exactly. Here, obviously you end up in contested matters sometimes, but for the most part, you're working with people to accomplish something, and that's different sometimes.
Yeah, it's better than
more. You can see something tangible too at the end of the day that ends up coming about because of the stuff you're involved with. So I like.
And you can actually see, that there's a tangible end result. You can actually see something built upon the ground.
Yeah. We don't have, and I got married in June, and we don't have any kids yet, so my wife isn't hammering at me. You got to be home at a reasonable time.
Well, that's the bad thing about that. It's all the night stuff. It makes for some long days.
Yeah. But this is close. Tomorrow night I'm in Chalfont, and it's going to be an all-night sort of thing. So this one is not so bad.
What did you go all the way up Bristol Road?
For Chalfont, I go up. I take the bypass. And then I go through Doylestown basically, and I get off by the hospital. And but that's on the different end of the spectrum. That's me sitting up there.
Yeah.
But
that's one of the things. Joe, our firm, we're the Perksy Regional Authority.
Okay.
We're their consultants.
All right.
We're the Milford Water Authority. We're their consultant in Milford Township.
Okay.
So we see things the same way.
Right.
Like in my town, in Warwick, I was on the planning commission for a dozen years, and now I've been on the zoning board.
It helps.
It does
provide a different perspective.
It really does. And then in our guys as municipal engineers, I review stuff. So I look at somebody else's plan and compare it to yours.
Right.
So I get to kind of see it from three different directions, which I think really helps. It really can open your eyes, because if I discover something while reviewing someone's plan, say in Milford, then when I develop a plan, say in Doylestown, I keep in the back of my mind that that's the kind of thing that we need to address here. So it really helps. It really does help.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One second.
Sure.
I represent Chalfont, so I work with Rich O'Brien. Yeah. That's right. I'm sorry. By the way, you reminded me when I said that. When he said that, and I came back, I was like, I know exactly. Yeah, now you're right, I did. That's right. I think you're probably right with that. Probably right. Have to go to another one. Thank you.
So, I reached out to
I think I've voted for it.
I have voted for
Good.
I called Steve, and I called
No. Oh, yeah, yeah.
I found they were up by voters when I told her. So, down, drop it off. He's one.
Company is.
Yeah.
They got that process. Filled up his basement, started pouring up my basement, stuff that were code. And, that had no source. Police code. Cop said, well, kind of trouble, and he says, that's why I'm a cop. When you try to break the law.
Sure.
No, it was yeah. No, but it was broken. It was a homeless guy. I don't know if you ever.
No. No, maybe I did. Hey, because I'm like hitting the line.
Hey, how you doing?
No, it's like, you know.
I'll find out.
Disturbing. It's gonna happen next door, that's why I'm, you know, that's why something is happening. So he has a voice too.
He's gonna lose it.
I don't want to make that problem, so that's way worse.
Say, what's your vision?
Doubtful he had anything to do with that tree, it just doesn't seem like.
They have to.
That's what I figured.
Code zoning will say yes, and then code will have to decide. So, yeah, they pull off, that's. He's gonna bring my policy hours. He's the zoning officer, but he works for. Steve, right?
Steve,
Is that his name?
Which
I can
one?
never remember his name.
Which one?
Keystone.
I'm drawing a line.
Yeah, well, that's all
Yeah, people say to me, what do you want to do? Rich.
Are the tires?
A nice thing. No, the owner's name is Rich. Yes.
You own it?
Same thing. Same thing.
Just like you put up a shed in the backyard.
The elevation. Upstairs going.
You know, all my family.
No, there's like a fence on the front, so you can't really see the house, you can see that it's tight.
That's probably elevated.
Yeah, it's technically.
According to
Well, they have full.
We did it, actually, we tried this.
Would it help?
Pretty close.
Yeah, that's a law. Yeah. After
I know there's tenant all about
Right, apartment lot.
Right.
You never have a.
Yeah, what's that? I think they're trying to. We're trying to do the best we can. You know. Yeah, well, you already. 3 foot, outside the hill.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I see it now.
It's just horrifying. What happened is.
That was, I believe it's.
I know, so they got a foundation of the law there. We can't force them.
Usually you don't wait 45 days. They'll have it that they'll have it.
They'd still see.
So normally.
That's what we do.
Yeah.
One of these days, that's the pieces that we're cutting down. Beside the trees. Absolutely.
Kevin's right.
Oh, yes.
Well, they're not. What's gonna happen? They don't write anything. They issue the opinion and they rely on what attorney write it. So even if you ask them a question, they don't they're basically whatever person.
All random in the house and the street.
You're gonna have the ability to buy
Maybe you should write an email to look at your personal and all that. Actually.
What's the matter with the self-construction company? They just don't want, they want
It was nice to meet you.
Okay, we're reconvened. Thank you for waiting. May I have a motion to either approve or deny the variances as requested?
Motion.
Approve. Seconded?
I second.
All in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
Okay, so the motion was, motion to approve was just passed. So the variance of the applicant, Paul Davis Recovery and Restoration Services, is approved as to the variances requested in the application, specifically and limited only to the following. Variance from section 465-13B to permit use A4 in the R2 district. A variance to use A4 standards in the R2 district, except for the following: lot area per dwelling unit, lot width, front setback, and side setback. From variance from section 465-38A to allow less than the required 2 off-street parking spaces per dwelling unit. And variance from section 465-59A to allow for reconstruction of the structure damaged more than 75% in a manner not in conformity with the district regulations. There are no additional conditions with the variances. The project shall be carried out and the use shall be conducted in a manner consistent with the application, testimony, evidence, and representations of the applicant and its representatives at the hearing. Receipt of all permits and approvals from any agencies having jurisdiction over the same to the extent applicable. Applicant shall pay all borough expenses related to the application to the extent not already paid. And the applicant shall comply with the rules, regulations, and ordinances of the borough, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and the United States government, particularly with the borough zoning ordinance and subdivision and land development ordinance to the extent applicable, unless otherwise waived. Does the applicant accept the conditions noted?
Yes, we do, thank you.
Thank you. And we already polled the board, and you know the decision of the board and each of its members. Therefore, the board has 45 days to prepare a written decision. The written decision with findings of fact and conclusion of law will be mailed to the applicant and every other party. An appeal may be filed with the Court of Common Pleas of Bucks County within 30 days of the written decision. If no appeal is filed within that time frame, the decision of the board becomes final. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. For housekeeping measures, you can go.
Yeah, the next meeting of the Zoning Hearing Board is scheduled for Monday, June 4th, 2018. And may I have a motion to adjourn the meeting, please?
I make a motion.
I second it.
All in favor?
Yeah.
Aye. Meeting adjourned.
Good night.
Hopefully you're in there, congratulations.
How you doing? Good to see you, man.
You guys.
While they build.
Nice.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah, sure. No problem. There you go.
All right.
So as soon as we're able, we'll get started.
Well, you know, any delays, try to, minimize. Like, we need a permit, hey, get on the phone.
Yeah. We'll get moving, believe me.
All right, thanks.
But yes, if you need any help, just please, my email address is on there.
I don't remember you from that day, but I appreciate it.
Yeah. I know,
They say I was
but
in
I'm
charge.
happy that, we're gonna have to.
Somebody puts that field in. What you're saying.
So what, do we have to wait?
Good luck.
So we don't.
All right. Thank you, sir. Jim, you did?